And Reena, I'm going to change the control and pass them on to you right now. Take it away.
Okay, thank you. Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Reena, and Benedict did a great job introducing me. So I'm just going to talk about the unit that I'm a part of and how we address elder abuse. So as you know, I'm a victim support worker employed by Family Services of Greater Vancouver, and I work in partnership with a detective. And we also have another community counselor in the office, and she works specifically with domestic violence files. So there's three of us in the unit total, and both of us support, like myself and the other counselor, were employed by Family Services of Greater Vancouver. Our service description. So the DVRT, which is an acronym for the Domestic Violence Response Team, it pairs New West Police Department, a detective with a counselor, to conduct specialized follow-up on cases of elder abuse in New West. These are case-tailored plans which are developed to increase safety for elder victims and hold abusers accountable to enhance police response by balancing a support function with a traditional control function. Continuum of services for elder abuse. So I'm just going to speak on behalf of my partner, who unfortunately wasn't able to participate in today's presentation because we've been working on a file. So if you look at how we get our referrals in the unit, typically what will happen is patrol will go respond to a call, and if they notice that there's seniors involved in the file and they suspect that there may be some elements of elder abuse, we'll get a referral sent in through patrol, or they will put that referral through to our victim assistance unit, which is police-based, and it's victim services. They'll review the file within their unit, and then they'll refer the file to us. Also, other community agencies have been known to refer files to myself or in our unit. So, for example, we do a lot of collaboration with, for example, probation. When offenders have to go report to their probation officers, I had a file where an accused would go in and talk to his probation officer about how he was abusing his senior father, and then the probation officer was quite concerned, and then they contacted our unit, and then we started working actively with that elderly gentleman. Health Authority, we do a lot of collaboration with Royal Columbian Hospital, with the social work team there. So if a senior comes in and they look like they've been abused, or they're in care there, they're a patient at the hospital, and then they notice a relative go visit them or someone go visit them, and the staff notices that that person visiting the senior is acting in inappropriate ways, and they suspect that they may be abusing that individual, they'll contact us, and then we can investigate whether or not there is something going on in terms of elder abuse. Mental health, oftentimes a lot of our files, there's a huge component of mental health and substance misuse. So mental health will also contact us if they're working with a client and they have a senior parent that the client is working for. Public guardianship trustees, they'll also contact us sometimes. So our referral sources come from different sources. They don't all just come from the police department. Okay, so as you know, the partner role, so I'm the counselor, victim support worker. So my main role is to connect with the individual. And the partnership has been successful in the past because I'm employed with Family Services of Greater Vancouver, and because I meet the clients as a counselor or support worker, I have that confidentiality agreement. And so I tell the clients that conversations that they have with me are in confidence, and I don't need to act on that information. So on some level, that makes them feel less, it makes them feel more comfortable to talk to me and less intimidated. There's obviously some limits to that confidentiality, but for the most part, knowing that I'm not a police officer, I work for a counseling agency, gives them a little bit more freedom to talk to me openly. the police officer, I'm speaking on my partner's behalf here, she conducts the investigation, she monitors the offender, she looks at whether or not the offender has like prior history, if they've done this to other people before, if they've had any charges. So as a team, we come together and we support. So the detective will do the offender management, she'll do the arrest, she'll check in with the probation officer, she'll monitor whether there's been any breaches, and then I support the victim or the client, the senior who's going through the process. And oftentimes the files, there is some type of an emotional attachment to the offender. It's not a stranger that is abusing them. So then I also support the senior with, you know, how do you set boundaries with this person that's abusing you? How do you take care of yourself and not feel the need to like overstep your boundary as a parent or a loved one and let this person continue to abuse you? So as a team together, when we do get referrals, we look at the different risk factors that are involved. So some of the risk factors that we look at is, first of all, the severity of the incident, what's happened, if there's a history of the offender, as I mentioned before, if they've done this before, if there's been any previous charges, if that person, the offender, is dealing with mental health and substance misuse. What else comes to mind? Those are the main ones, but that's not the only pieces that we use to determine whether or not we're going to take a file, but those are the common ones. And then what we do is together we talk about how we can support the senior or the individual and help keep them safe. Again, as I mentioned, so the files that we do take in this unit has to be a relationship, and I think there's a slide that will get to that. So because there's usually a relationship with the offender, just going in and getting police involved and doing an arrest and having that person removed from the home isn't always the outcome that the seniors are looking for. So we look at different ways to support them, and then we do a lot of outreach work with the senior. Okay, so ongoing responsibilities for myself, and I don't see the slide, so I'm just going to mention this now. The partnership, the domestic violence response team, we only take files where there is some type of a relationship with the victim and the offender. And because there's an emotional connection there, and it's harder for people when they're emotionally attached to someone to get outside support, is why we take those files. So they're very specific files. And like I said, for myself and even for the other counselor, we only take files where there's a relationship dynamic. Now, the person doesn't need to have an actual blood relationship with the individual. It could be like a friend or a roommate that's moved in, but there needs to be some type of an emotional attachment or dependency. So some of my responsibilities are to talk about ongoing safety issues with the senior, the victim, to support them, to do some brief counseling, to give them information. Sometimes some of the files that I work on, it involves coordinating other services together, so using like a collaborative approach to support the family. So 90% of my files, I would say that I have, it's seniors dealing with an adult child that has mental health or addictions. And oftentimes the parents have a really difficult time kicking their son or daughter out. And so what we do sometimes is have these collaborative meetings, so between the police, myself, mental health, probation, sometimes, not always, and we all kind of come together and we look at how we can support the family and keep them safe, because the senior doesn't always want to sever ties with the individual. It's more about looking at how different agencies can support the family, get them the help that they need, while the senior can maintain a relationship with their loved one. There's a lot of liaising and providing advocacy within the community. So again, as I just mentioned, we collaborate a lot with Royal Columbian Hospital, Fraser Health, New West Mental Health Team, BC Housing, Public Guardian, and Trustee. There's a lot of practical assistance offered as well, because oftentimes people have never had any experiences with the police. They don't know what to expect. They don't usually reach out for any outside supports. They usually keep things to themselves, and other family members or friends will be tired of listening to the same problem that this individual has been having over and over again. So when I come in and I meet them, it's sometimes just refreshing for them to hear some practical advice about how they can deal with their situation. There's also a lot of facilitating between the family and other community agencies. So the biggest part is also just getting the police to help in some way. Oftentimes people are quite intimidated to have police involved, and the last thing they want is to have their son or daughter arrested. So it's kind of bridging the gap between them and the police, being like the facilitator and communicating how the police can support them and making accessing supports less intimidating. The detective's responsibility, I'm again just speaking on behalf of my partner here, so she'll conduct follow-up investigations. Again, she'll look at the history of the offender, if they've had past charges, if they're doing this to other people as well. They'll monitor post-offense behavior. So for example, are they breaching? Are they reporting to the probation officer? They liaise with Crown Counsel a lot. So for example, an arrest will be made, and then my detective partner will contact Crown and say, okay, this is what's happened, this is what's going on with the file. And it's that communication and collaboration between the police department and Crown Counsel that's really effective in supporting the families and getting them the help that they need. There's a highlight offender with probation. There's coordinated efforts between patrol and DVRT. So for example, there's education, there's training that happens within the department. So when patrol members do go to a file with a senior involved, with training from our unit, they have more awareness of what kind of signs to look for and also what type of supports are available, because sometimes they don't even know what supports are available for seniors in the community. The detective also tries to review all files with people who are over the age of 65, and she also enforces legal conditions. Challenges. So there's a lot of challenges that we encounter in this unit working with seniors. They're all listed here, so I'll just go over them. Oftentimes it's also just the lack of awareness of the problem. So what will happen is a senior will start to get abused by their son or daughter. It doesn't happen overnight. It's something that happens gradually. And it slowly starts to get worse and worse and worse. So what happens is that person who's being abused doesn't even realize that they're being abused, because on some level that kind of becomes their normal, because it's just a gradual progression. And also they love that person, or they have this attachment to that person, and it's difficult for them to even realize that so-and-so is capable of abusing them. There's also a large piece of shame associated with that. Like, it's very shameful to talk about the possibility of being abused by a loved one. Cultural sensitivity. Sometimes it's shameful for families to get police involved, of how people respond to that. They're afraid that if they do get police involved, that they won't be able to have any contact with their abuser. Again, it could be their son or daughter. There's barriers to our unit in connecting to victims sometimes, because they're isolated. It's hard to access them. They have disabilities. They have age-related cognitive declines with dementia, mental health themselves. The offender could be present there, so we wouldn't even be able to go in. So for example, say we went to a file, we suspected there was elder abuse going on, I go with my partner, and the offender's present, that senior who's being victimized won't disclose to us in that moment that they are actually in fact being abused, because the offender is present. They're not able to speak freely about what's going on. The victim's reluctance to involve police for fear of family members being taken away from them or being put in jail. Cultural and language barrier. Lack of understanding, police seen as authority and not there to help. I would say the cultural and language barrier, it's a big challenge. There's huge gaps with that in the work we're doing. in terms of cultural sensitivity. So, for example, like depending on the person's cultural background, they may not even trust police, and also feel that the police don't understand some of their cultural values around family and family values and obligation. And if they can't speak the language, it makes it even more difficult for them to try to access support. Legal system challenges, awareness, mistrust, corruption. I kind of touched up on that little bit. So depending on the victim's experience of police in where they were born or the country that they came from, sometimes police is corrupt in their home country. So when they come here, they don't realize that that's not the case and that they can be trusted. There's a lack of resources for adult children with mental health, addiction issues, who are living with their elderly parents, and this is a common trend that I'm seeing. So, an adult who's suffering from mental illness and addictions could be declining, and they're living with their senior parent, but there seems to be a threshold point. So, until that individual does something really extreme and drastic, there's no supports available for that individual. So, there's not a lot of resources for adults who are struggling, and the way that it's set up right now is it's voluntary. And in my experience, most individuals won't access the help because they don't think anything's wrong with them. Another challenge and something we see often in our unit is lack of end-of-life education planning. So people aren't doing their power of attorneys, they're not doing the representation agreements and their medical planning. Another challenge we face in the unit is improper police report coding to capture actual elder abuse files in crime. So if they were to run some statistics, it wouldn't capture the number of elder abuse files because they don't get coded as elder abuse. They get coded as like check the well-being or noise complaint or something else. I'm speaking on behalf of my partner, so I don't know what the codes are. And also because there's only one counselor, myself, and I work part-time. I'm only here 2 days a week, and we only have one full-time detective in our unit, and she's shared between the elder abuse portion of the unit and also the domestic violence portion. So she's extremely busy. Police reporting. So if you look at the statistics here, how many actually get coded as elder abuse? So in 2010, there was 3. Persons offenses with individuals who are carded as victims over the age of 65, there was 25. And fraud offenses with persons over the age of 65, there was 24. And those numbers don't really change a lot over the years if you kind of go across. Like there's a slight increase, but not a lot. So again, that just speaks to the way they're being coded and how they're not actually being captured for what they are. So how do we support older adults experiencing abuse in a police partnership role? So again, having a family services counselor working in partnership with the police, that helps. Again, the confidentiality piece is huge. It makes the victim feel less reluctant and wanting to access some support. And the way the model was developed, they based it on a model that they used for working with victims of domestic violence, where you go in and you support the victim and you give them a sense of autonomy with what's going on. So you don't go in and take control away from the individuals. You look at where they're at and you expand their supports by connecting with them and helping them look at different ways and how to deal with their situation and connecting them with other supports as well. The collaboration with police resources, such as our mental health liaison officers. So in my role, working with seniors, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the children are dealing with mental health and substance misuse, and we have a mental health liaison officer at the department. So what I can do sometimes is when that officer is dealing with a particular individual and they're living with their adult parents, is I can tell the parent, okay, you know, so-and-so's been arrested, they've been apprehended under the Mental Health Act. This is what the police are trying to do. They're trying to put, you know, recommend some charges for them to go get an assessment done through forensics, get them into like some type of a treatment facility. So it's the collaboration between what the police is trying to do to support the family and giving that information to the parent who doesn't know what's going on, and they feel overwhelmed and they have lots of questions and concerns, and when they think, oh no, my son or daughter is involved with the police, what am I going to do? It kind of helps reassure them that, actually the police are involved, but it's more to get them the help that they need. And again, I kind of spoke earlier about collaboration with other agencies. So Crown Counsel, that's a big piece that my partner is collaborating with Crown all the time on files. I will talk to probation a lot of times as well. I'll call them and I'll be like, okay, so, has so-and-so been checking in? Where are they in terms of their level of taking responsibility for what's happened? Are they going to the programs that they're supposed to be going to? Did they seem remorseful for what's happened? Fraser Health, I collaborate with them as well, Home Health. And then I also just do ongoing support with the client and follow up with them regularly. And it's not just a role or a partnership that involves just going in one time, getting involved with families, setting them up with resources, and then you finish. It's not that easy. So it requires patience and time. And I've worked with families for over 6 years now. I've had a file from 2010, and it's a regular ongoing support, checking in with the families, seeing how they're doing, seeing how, their son or daughter has been recently, or they're having any issues. We talk about, what's going on, what's causing some outbursts, what are some different ways that they can deal with their situation, how can they keep themselves safe. The main focus is always around safety and doing safety planning with them and helping the individual look at different ways to deal with their situation where they are more safe. The unit also does a lot of training and education for members, for police officers on the road. There's coordination between patrol and our unit. We do recommend when patrol go to any police files related to people who are over the age of 65 to refer them to our unit. And one of the goals of the unit is to change police policy to require mandatory follow-ups when members are dealing with a file related to seniors. Okay, so to just go into the family context portion of the work a little bit more, I did mention earlier the big elements of shame and guilt and past abuse. So also what we notice at times in the unit is when there's files that come in where a senior is being abused by their son or daughter, sometimes there's historical abuse that's happened, and so it kind of shifts around to the parent, and then that parent has a lot of shame and guilt and is less reluctant to access supports. The emotional attachment piece, this is one major barrier that I have in the work that I do. There's a lot of isolated, lonely seniors in New West, and a trend that we've seen recently with an increase in files is there'll be a lonely senior, an individual suffering from mental health and substance misuse will show up and offer to support them with some landscaping and some maintenance jobs in their home, and start to develop a relationship with the senior. And once they notice that the senior is pretty lonely and isolated, and they just kind of keep to themselves, and they don't have a lot of family or friends interacting with them regularly, then they start to slowly move in on them and say, oh, so do you mind if I spend the night at your place? And from there, it slowly becomes, oh, okay, well, do you mind if I rent out a room from you in exchange for doing some landscaping work or some repair jobs around your home? And then that person ends up moving in, and then from there, the senior becomes emotionally dependent on this person, and then that individual starts to talk to them about their power of attorney. And so they'll say things like, well, whoever you have assigned as your power of attorney, how do you know that person will have your best interest at heart here? I'm spending every day with you. I see you on a regular basis. I know more about you than that person. Therefore, I think you should change your power of attorney to myself. And the senior, who's so lonely and isolated and is is enjoying having this company around them all the time and having some of their social needs met, is fearful of losing that connection with that person, so they'll agree. And then from there, what happens is that person will now start to financially abuse the senior and start taking money from them, and then the mental health and the addiction starts taking over, and then they become more aggressive towards the senior, and the senior becomes more fearful, and they know the situation is not healthy and it's not right, but then they're torn and they're caught between having their social, emotional needs met versus their sense of safety. So that's a huge piece, and that same applies for children who are abusing their parents as well. The parent thinks, okay, so my son or daughter, at least they live in my house, they're able to go get my medications for me, they will get my groceries for me, you know, if I need help with something, I've got someone around. So they, in their mind, they rationalize the benefits of having an abuser in the home versus their safety. So one of my roles is looking at, you know, parenting. How are they parenting? How are they setting their boundaries with their children? How are they practicing self-care and thinking about their own safety? Like, where are some of these belief systems coming from where they think, okay, I don't need to think about my own sense of safety. Instead, I have to be like this, always take care of, you know, Susie or Bob or whoever the child may be. As I was saying earlier too, fear of losing contact with the individual. In my experience, no parent wants to never have any contact with their son or daughter again, even if they are abusing them. So one of the roles is to look at how that senior can have some type of a relationship with their son or daughter in a safe way. So one of the things that we do is say, okay, let's have that person removed from the home, but you guys can go meet in public. So, for example, go have a cup of coffee sometimes in public, or go out for dinner, or have visits with the individual, with someone else around. So they can still have a relationship with their loved ones, but not have them living at home and put their senior parent under constant stress. Cultural norms. Some communities, there's more shaming of getting police involved than others. People will turn around and say, oh, how could you take your son or daughter out when you knew they were struggling? What type of parent are you? How could you get police involved? This is a personal family matter. So seniors are also sometimes concerned about what other people will think within their own community if they access outside support. Some cultures tend to not accept outside supports, and they like to keep it in their families more so than others. There's still a lot of stigma around mental health and addiction. So even if a senior did have a child with an adult child struggling with that, they don't necessarily feel comfortable talking about it with others or other outside supports. Some files I have, but not that many, is where there is a partner who is starting to decline cognitively, and they now become abusive towards their senior partner. And those similar dynamics where the senior feels a lot of guilt and shame accessing support, they don't know what to do, it's hard for them to realize that this is happening to their partner. And so we work very similarly. With those ones, there's more health authority involvement, so we can get a referral put in through home health where someone can go in and do an assessment and see how the senior is doing. If they need more support beyond what the partner can provide, we try to support them in getting them into some type of assisted living facility so that the other person doesn't need to care for them, like bear all that on their own. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers our unit and the work that we do. I went through everything really quickly. I feel like I've left some things out, and I apologize. We were working on a file this morning, so I got a little distracted with that. But you've got our contact information at the end, and if you have any specific police questions, you could direct those to my police partner, Detective Jacqueline Frost. But I think we're going to open up for some questions now.
Thank you, Reena. Yes, we're going to open up the Q&A right now. Let me just bring back my screen so you guys can see what I'm showing. So first things first, I would like for you guys to see the contact information, both for Reena and her partner Jacqueline. So if you have any question at all, don't hesitate. If you, once again, if you want to consult these slides later on, we'll make them available on our website. Actually, they already are on our website at cnpa.ca under webinars. And finally, as promised earlier, before we move on to the questions, we have some questions for you. So if you have a moment to take a survey to let us know how we did with the webinar, you have until Halloween, October 31st, to let us know. That link will be sent to you tomorrow as well. It would be great. And once again, this webinar is part of the Family Violence Initiative. So we're going to be listing a bunch of resources, documents, and webinars in the next few months around the Family Violence Initiative. Look for that purple and white logo. We have tagged everything under the FVIF, so if you look for that acronym on our website, you'll find all the resources as well. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Here's all our contact information. Now, moving on to the Q&A, we have Nadine, who is asking if there is an older adult protection agency in BC. Reena, and by the way, I haven't seen many questions come through during the presentation, so don't be shy. You can now unmute yourselves and ask all the questions that you want. Reena?
What was the, sorry, I didn't hear the question. What's the question?
Oh, let me get back to the questions and ask it again. Is there an older adult protection agency in BC? I don't know where Nadine is calling from or listening in from, so.
Yes, there is. It's the Public Guardian Trustee. Adult
Nadine,
Guardian.
Yes. Nadine, if you're able to get online and let us know where you're calling from or emailing from? Ontario. Here we go. Thank you. Any other question? Not so far. Okay. Reena, I know you kind of had to take everything on by yourself. You did great, by the way. But is there anything that you wanted to add that you still have a little bit of time? So, here comes a question from Stephanie. What were the challenges in developing a partnership between the family services and the police? Do you have any tips trying to develop a similar collaboration in other cities? Where can I get my hands on Edmonton's model?
Oh, that's a good question. I'd have to direct that one to management. If I could get your contact info and talk to someone regarding the history of how the partnership began, and then you could look at the model and discuss it with the Edmonton Police. Is that what you're wanting to do? I'm just trying to read the question here. What were the challenges in those? Yeah, if you could give me your contact info, and then I could talk to one of my managers about the history in developing the partnership model. I don't know what the challenges were specifically between the two agencies, but I know that there was a group that came together wanting to look at how victims of domestic violence could get supported. And it was looking at how to support victims of violence that the first model began in Vancouver, or no, here, where there was a police officer and a counselor working together, and then the elder abuse model came from that model.
And in your everyday interactions, Reena, are there still sometimes some not issues, but some obstacles coordinating between the two services, or is it fairly, mainstream by now?
With the police, you mean?
Yes.
Well, we're a specialized unit, and I can't really speak to that because I have a partner primarily. I don't know if she has challenges in her daily interactions. Maybe I could ask her to answer that question, but because I have a partner that I work with specifically, all my police-related questions go to her. And so her and I have conversations, and we look at how we can best support clients and families. There are times where we don't agree on things, and then we look at different ways where we can achieve the same goal. but my main contact is my partner.
Great. I have a new question. I'm sure you can see it too, from Tracy. Asking, she's a registered social worker in BC, and she's asking if there is any liaisoning between the domestic violence unit and elder abuse specialist between different law enforcement agencies in BC.
Okay, sorry, what's that question? I don't see the question on my end here.
Oh, okay. So it says, is there any liaison between the domestic violence unit's elder abuse specialists and different law enforcement agencies in BC?
So there is. Oh yeah, for sure. Depending on what's happening. And we have victims moving too. So if the incident occurs in New West and the victims move, then we'll liaise with other police departments. And then there's also a partnership like this in Vancouver. So Vancouver Police Department has the exact same partnership that we do, and their unit is actually bigger than ours.
Great, thank you. And Stephanie, thank you for sending your info. Reena will be getting in touch with you very soon. Any other questions? I think we so far have covered all the questions that were asked.
Did we answer this one? Is there any provincial coordination or conferences?
No, I did not see that one.
There is, yes. There's different committees and organizations that come together to look at, but not related specifically to just policing and elder abuse, no. But there's groups that are that exist to work with seniors who are being abused.
Oh, somebody forgot to mute themselves, or is it in your office, Reena?
That's in my office. I apologize. Oh. Sorry. That's why the police department. So
no problem at all. It's just towards the end, so not too bad. Okay. All right. Well, I think that might be a first. We're actually done early, unless we have a few more questions. You guys have about another 10 minutes if you want to ask your questions. If not, I will go back to our contact page so you can have Reena's information as well. And you are. So if you are on your computer right now, you have Jackie's and Reena's info, as well as the New Westminster Police Station phone number. And Tracy will be getting in touch. Oh, sorry, not Tracy. Stephanie will be getting in touch with you very soon with more details to answer your question. All right. Oh, another question. Are there any law enforcement protocols in BC or Canada related to interview and investigative process for elder abuse cases?
Yes, there are. And I would have to get my partner to answer that.
Okay. All right, Tracy, if you want to do the same thing as Stephanie and give us your information, we'll pass on the proper.
Okay.
Proper
Sorry, Benedict. Maybe I can get someone to answer that.
Yeah, that would be great.
I'll read it like, are there any law enforcement protocols in BC or Canada related to interview and investigative processes for elder abuse cases?
Protocols. It's not necessarily that we have protocols in BC. It's more that we have specialized training, much so, for example, if police are interviewing children, there are specific ways in which we, strategize on how to best interview children. It's much the same for elders. Obviously, you can't go in asking the same questions or the same sort of dynamic when you have a senior because of the stage of life and various challenges that you may have. But as far as being an actual protocol, I would just say there's more specialized training.
Tracy, does that answer your question? Oh, thank you. Great, Tracy. We'll follow up with you. We're glad that you asked your questions. Anyone else? Actually, Tracy, feel free to ask more if you have more. And thank you, whoever answered this question, by the way.
Okay. She said you're welcome.
All right. Well, we have a few more minutes, but if we have no more questions, I think we can all let you go early, and Reena, let you go back to today's case. Once again, thank you very much for taking the time to speak with us in spite of a very busy morning. It was much appreciated. The webinar was recorded, so if you missed the start, or if you missed some of the information that was shared, keep an eye out on cnpa.ca. The recording and the slides will be made available very, very soon. The slides are also available in French, should you be interested in the French version of it. If you have any question about the Family Violence Initiative project, you can contact me. And if you want to follow up with Reena and Jacqueline, you have the information in the slides right now. Once again, thank you all very much for attending. And Reena, thank you so much for hosting all by yourself. You did great.
You're welcome.
All right. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.